Well, hello, friends. This is Nathan Lawrence, Hoshana Rabbah. You're not used to seeing me dressed like this, but this is what I wear on a daily basis. It's the winter time here in Northwest Oregon. Standing in front of my truck. Just got home from cutting trees and pruning with chainsaws and all my usual gear that we use to run my tree service. I'm out here in the weather, the rain, the snow, the heat, and that's what I've been doing all my life. And I'm going to talk to you about a subject that I haven't really talked too much about before. And here I am in the city, suburbs of a major metropolitan area, in front of my house. See a couple of my trucks here in the background. And I'm going to talk about prepping. Most of the time on the Hoshana Rabbah channel, we talk about spiritual prepping. But there is a physical element to the spiritual prepping as well. It's called being a profitable and a wise servant. So stay tuned to this video, and I'm going to just share with you my lifestyle of prepping. My family have been preppers for the last 100 years around this area. We didn't know the term prepping. That was something we never heard of, but we just lived that lifestyle. It's called being prepared. And I think the servants of Yehovah, if they are to be survivors and useful in these last days, and to be good providers for their family and maybe even a few of those people around them, so that we can be salt and light in this dying and decaying world, I think it's wise that we consider being preppers. All right, stay tuned. Well, hello again, everyone. Shalom, shalom, shalom to everyone out there. So I'm a little cleaned up from the introduction. I just came in from the field working. As many of you know, I'm an arborist. I have a tree care company. I've been pruning trees and other things for a living since I was 13, so that's more than 50 years. And I'm still doing it here. I'm in my mid-60s. We're a small family tree care company. And I've done everything from logging. I live in Oregon. So at one time, Oregon was the logging capital and timber producing capital of the United States. And it still is a major timber producer. We have some of the best forests in the world in our area and along this part of the Pacific coast of the Pacific Northwest. And so a lot of us make our living in the woods or working with trees and plants and that kind of thing. And that's what I've done. But that's just one of the things that I do. We're going to talk about prepping and prepping in the city. And what I have done, I live in the outskirts of a major metropolitan area in the United States. But I grew up on a farm. I was fourth generation on a family farm. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about my background and what turned me into a prepper. Although back 40, 50, 60 years ago, we didn't use that term. It was just a way of life. But that way of life formed my thinking, informed me, and I'm very grateful for how I was raised on a farm. And we preparing for hard times, for the winter, and for slow times in my father's business. We come from a family of small business entrepreneurs. And so we had slow times, so we had to prepare. But let me tell you a little bit more about myself. So I am an arborist. I'm a certified arborist. I've been pruning for a living and taking care of trees, removing trees, logging, which I don't do that anymore, but I used to have a logging company, and I had heavy equipment, bulldozers and log skidders and multiple trucks and all kinds of things. And then I eventually, my business evolved into a commercial and residential tree care company, which I've been doing now for nearly 40 years. But this is just one of the things that I do. This is how I support my family. My children are now grown. Two of our 4 children are married, and another one is probably soon to be married, and hopefully grandchildren will be soon to follow. My wife and I are my wife of 30, going on 33 years, and 4 children later. We're looking forward to grandchildren. And so we are in our mid-60s, and we're still enjoying life and have good health. We're very blessed. Serving and obeying Yehovah, following his Torah and his word, the Bible, has been very good to us. And we are very grateful for the lifestyle, the Hebraic lifestyle, which I have been living most of my life. I was born and raised into it. And I spent a few years in the mainstream traditional Christian church, which you can go read my bio on my blog. It's all there. I'm an open book. I've talked about this many times. And then about 35 years ago, or more than 35 years, I should say almost 30 years ago, I began coming back to the Hebraic side of things from traditional Christianity. So my tree service is how I have supported my family. And of course, I have the ministry, and that is not how I supported my family. The ministry has basically supported itself and the expenses thereof. And I pastored a local congregation for 18 years. And I've been involved in many, over the last going on 35 years, many different kinds of ministry, evangelistic ministry, outreach, urban missionary, as well as prison ministry. I've pastored, I've youth pastored, I've chaplained, I have preached on the streets, I've preached in churches, I've preached in migrant camps, I've preached on the streets of the big city near me, Portland, Oregon. I have preached in prisons, I have preached in front of porn shops. I've preached in parades. I've preached, you name it, I've preached, of course, in churches. And I've done radio. I've done television. Of course, I have 3 YouTube channels. Hoshana Rabbah is one of them. I'm a busy guy. So the tree service is not the only thing that I do. I also have 2 blogs. And my wife and I travel. I have been privileged to travel to more than 30 countries on 6 of the 7 continents. And I've studied at 5 institutions of higher learning, including 3 universities here in the United States and in Europe. And in my tree service, I have many credentials. I have a very successful, very nice tree service business. I'm very blessed. I've made my business, my tree service, my ministry. So I get to minister to a lot of people through the marketplace, as well as through social media, through my YouTube channel, through preaching the gospel, through many ways. It's a lifestyle. So I praise Yah. I am kind of a rustic kind of a guy. I grew up on a farm. We raised almost all of our own food. I'll talk about that in a little bit. And this all has to do with my view on prepping. And that's why I'm telling you a little bit about my background. I come from a background, a family of outdoorsmen. We've all made our living in the out of doors. My father before me, and now me, and my son. We work outside. We work with our hands. We work with our minds as well, and we're skilled craftsmen in what we do. but we've spent a lot of time. In my area, we have big mountains, and my family has been climbing mountains. My grandfather, since before World War I, so going on 100, probably almost 110 years. And I've climbed many of the mountains around here. I've started skiing on the mountains. I'm talking about the big mountains. We're talking mountains with glaciers on them. Started skiing when I was about 7 or 8 years old. I spent a lot of time backpacking, camping, hiking, and that also informs my view on prepping. So that's why I'm giving you this information. I've spent a lot of time in the mountains, a lot of time in a lot of mountains, Europe, and I've been in the Andes. I've been in the many times in Alaska and in the Canadian Rockies, the U.S. Rockies, as well as the Cascade Mountains and the Sierra Nevada mountains of Nevada and California. I feel very blessed. I'm still very active. Today I was out pruning trees, fruit trees, as well as I took a couple of trees down. And I feel very blessed to be very physically active and out of doors. And again, this informs, for me, I'm just sharing my testimony, informs my view on prepping. So I come from pioneer stock. My family came to Oregon in the late 1800s, Oregon and Washington, in the late 1800s. Now, my wife, her family came across the Oregon Trail. I'm a fourth generation Oregonian and Washingtonian, but my wife and my partner in life is a seventh generation Oregonian. Her family came in the 1840s across the Oregon Trail, so she's got me beat by about 60 years as far as my family. I have grandparents a grandmother that came from Germany, a great-grandfather that came from Sweden, immigrated here. I knew both of them. And I have family members, just like my wife, that go back to the era of the Pilgrims in the United States. So we've been here a long time. Again, I feel very blessed. And so I grew up on a farm, fourth generation, one that my great-grandparents came when they came from Germany on my mother's side, and they started a farm. We had a small acreage, and I learned a lot on that farm. That's all I knew. And really, it was like growing up in the 1800s, but in the 1960s and 1970s is when I grew up. So when I say it was, we had electricity and we had plumbing. Now, my mother, God rest her soul, my mother grew up and they didn't have, they had electricity, but they didn't have indoor plumbing or like a toilet or a shower or any of that kind of thing. I think they had one faucet that came from the hand-dug well that my grandfather dug back in the early 1920s. But I grew up in the old farmhouse, and we raised all of our meat. We had cattle, we had sheep, we had goats. It was my job to take care of them. I did that until I was in my early 20s. We had all kinds of poultry. We had probably several dozen laying hens, chickens. We had fryers that we would raise every year, and then we'd butcher them and put them in the freezer. We butchered our sheep, we butchered our goats, we butchered our cows, our cattle. We always ran several beef. We had turkeys, we had ducks, we had geese, and we had various and sundry other kosher animals. The only animal that was not kosher was the dog, and that dog was a guard dog, was a sheep dog. So I grew up taking care of those things. In addition to that, we had our own orchard. That's where I learned to prune fruit trees, and that's eventually what got me into caring for trees. I began to prune the trees on the orchard that my grandfather planted back probably in the 1920s and 30s. And then when I was 13 years old, I began pruning trees for the neighbors. My parents didn't have very little money. They didn't have any money to spare for me. So I had to go out and earn my own money. I learned a work ethic very early on in my life. And so when I was not getting straight A's in high school and junior high and grade school, I was out working either on the farm or I was working to earn a little extra money for things that I needed in my life, a bicycle and some clothing and things like that. So I began to work for the neighbors, prune their trees, and then take care of their garden, mow their grass. And I had a lot of people that I worked for over the years, and I had my own little business going, which I started at age 13, and I did that all the way through high school and college. And of course, I grew up working on the farm, but my father was a landscaper, a gardener, a nurseryman, a landscape designer. So I grew up in the landscaping business. So my hands have always been in the soil, on tools, on chainsaws, on pruning equipment, behind mowers, running, working the earth and that kind of thing. So I went to 3 years of college, wanted to go into the corporate world. And we were Sabbath keepers. I grew up as a Sabbath keeper, and I realized that actually I wanted to become a journalist. I started working as a journalist, as a writer for the largest newspaper in the state of Oregon, the Portland Oregonian newspaper, the oldest newspaper west of the Mississippi River. I started working for that when I was 18 as a writer, as a reporter. I have a whole notebook full of articles that I've written, and I wrote for other newspapers as well, and a magazine or two along the way. When I was still in high school, I was editor of my school newspaper, and then I began to write for newspapers, both community, local newspapers in some of the cities around, as a reporter around my area, as well as for two of the universities I attended for the college newspaper, as well as the Portland Oregonian. So I was going to become a journalist, and about it was my fourth or fifth year of college, I realized I couldn't be a journalist because it would require that I violate the Sabbath and work on the Sabbath and on the biblical feast days, which were very important to me. So that ended my career as a writer, at least in the journalistic world, and this was back in the early 1980s. And so eventually I became a writer, a biblical writer, a biblical researcher and writer, and I used my academic skills that I learned studying at the collegiate level as a researcher and as a writer. I'm an academically trained journalistic writer, studied at 2 journalism schools. So I used that, as many of you know, I've done a lot of writing, and I use my journalistic background as a presenter and as a writer, as a speaker and that kind of thing. But because of my roots, if you will, pun intended, double entendre there, roots in horticulture and in agriculture, farming and caring for trees, I reverted back to that, and I realized that is where Yah wanted me to be. That's where I could be the captain of my own ship. And again, this informs my view on prepping. That's why I'm giving you this quick 15-minute or so background. So, having always been close to the earth, having grown up learning on the farm, as I said, we did a lot of things. We raised all of our own food, almost all of our own food. The only food that we didn't raise was the wheat, and my mom would buy wheat in the 80 or 100-pound sacks. We ground our own flour. We had a flour grinder. We made our own bread. We canned all of our own fruits, all of our own vegetables. We froze, dehydrated, made all of our own jams and jellies. We made all of our tomato sauces, pickles, hot peppers, chili peppers, that kind of thing. We had a large vegetable garden. It was probably a half an acre in size. And we had all of our own berries, raspberries, strawberries, caneberries, trailing berries. Blueberries. I learned to prune all those things. I think about all the things we did. We had our own. It's amazing. There was never a time to not be working. Thankfully, we were Sabbath keepers, so I got one day a week where I got to rest. And we went to church and read our Bibles and did all the things we did on the Sabbath. We had our own bees, made our own honey. We made our own soap from the sheep tallow that we rendered down when we butchered our sheep. I tanned sheep hides. I made moccasins. We I learned to we had to use firearms to protect our flocks. We butchered our own animals. There was so much that we did. Build our own barns, repaired our own fences, took care of the animals. We had to do veterinary work on the animals, our livestock. Did a lot of our own first aid, our own. I learned about healing medicines, herbs. It goes on and on and on. So again, I tell you this because this informed my approach to prepping, and along with backpacking in the mountains where we would go, I carry a 50, 60, 65, 70 pound pack up in the mountains, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10,000 foot elevation, trekking through the mountains, sometimes a week or more at a time. And we would carry all of our own survival gear, our own how to make a fire, how to, I've been in snowstorms in the mountains. I've been in ice storms. I've been in windstorms. I've been in sub-freezing temperatures, you name it. And I've had the gear to survive in those kinds of environments. Thankfully, my parents taught me, I learned. I also went through the Boy Scouts. They're not such a reputable organization as they used to be. But when I was young, the Boy Scouts of America was a reputable organization. And I went through that program and became an Eagle Scout when I was 16. And I might say that many of you maybe don't know unless you were in the Scouts, but I started in the Scouts when I was like 13. And the motto for the Scouts is be prepared. In fact, I could show you, let me look here. So here are all my Eagle Scout badges. I've never shown these to anybody before, but if you look real close, and I'll show a close-up picture, there's my Eagle Scout pendant. It says, be prepared. I'll do a close-up of that, and then you can see. So anyway, there's proof that I actually am an Eagle Scout. And my wife also, she was in the Girl Scouts, God bless her, and she's a Girl Scout. I think that for theirs is the first class. That's the highest level, the highest rank. So both my wife and I don't know what the Girl Scout motto is. I don't know if it's be prepared or not, but at least in the Boy Scouts, it's be prepared. So our family, both my wife, her family were campers and hikers. And our family was a little bit more hardcore. So as far as the outdoors, so we were out there climbing mountains and rocks and cliffs and shooting the rapids on rivers and doing all kinds of crazy things that we do here in the Pacific Northwest. Swimming in the rivers, the oceans, the lakes, the mountains, the streams, jumping off of glaciers into the water, or not glaciers, but snowfields, and done it all. But anyway, that's what I want to get to here is there are a couple ways to approach prepping. Now, I grew up on a farm, and honestly, if we had lost power, we could have survived. We had kerosene lanterns, we had firewood, we were able to cook on a wood stove, and there were times when we did lose power. We had lots of food because my father was a landscaper. Work was slow in the wintertime, and my parents didn't have a lot of money, so we canned hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of quarts of vegetables, fruits every year. My mom was very busy. One year she canned 1,000 quarts of fruits, vegetables, jellies, juices, jams, you name it. We did it. We had a vegetable garden. We also had a winter garden where we had our own potatoes, our own winter squash, our own cabbage, our own turnips, parsnips, carrots. We saved those all through the winter, so we were eating on that all year long. We had a big. Our well, we had a large tank of water that we could get water out of if the electricity went out. We were not we were just living as farmers. I mean, that's what farmers do. And that's what they've been doing for thousands of years. And that was our lifestyle. That was our approach. We prepared during the summertime and the fall, and then we lived off. We had apples that we stored and pears. We had winter keeper apples that we would keep all through the winter. We would keep them in cold storage, so we were eating fresh fruit all winter long. That's how I was raised, and that along with the Boy Scout motto, "Be prepared," it has been a lifestyle for me, and so. I'm not privileged to live on land anymore. I have a small piece of property in an urban setting. Be honest with you, my wife and I were hoping to move. We thought we would we bought our house about 30 years ago and raised our 4 children here. 3 of them were born in this house, they were born in the hospital. Our oldest child was 6 months old when we moved into this house. This house is a 100 and some odd year old house. It was a major fixer-upper. We bought it for very inexpensively, and now it's worth a whole lot more money. Hallelujah. A lot of sweat equity that went into this house. And unfortunately, we figured we'd be here for a few years and then we'd move out onto an acreage in a more rural area. Well, as it happened, property prices in our area have skyrocketed. They are twice or 3 times what they are in other parts of the United States. And now you have to have a lot of money, sometimes up to $1 million, between $700,000 to $1 million to buy, in our area, a piece of land with a little acreage and that kind of thing. And I would say that that's I am debt free, and I'm not interested in going into debt, especially at my age and in light of the economic conditions. So plus I have my business here. It's all of my work is very close to my home. I have a very loyal clientele, and until Yehovah shows me somewhere else to go, and I've laid my business on the altar, if you will, before him, take it away. If you want to move me in some other direction, I'm willing to give it up after nearly 40 years building it up. But I'm not just going to jump, from the frying pan into the fire. I'm not going to just jump, like assuming the grass is greener on the other side. That's not faith. That's folly. Unless Yah speaks to me and speaks to my wife and we have confirmation, this is where we have been planted, if you will. I like plants, so I use those kind of terms. And here we are. And many of you may find yourself in that situation where you are where you're at, and it would be nice to live on acreage and be self-sufficient and raise your own food and all of that. But some of you may be older like I am. I'm in my 60s. I really don't want to start all over again. And I think my wife echoes that. And here we are. And if Yah opened up a door for us to go, we might. We would if that's what he wanted us to do. And I'd give it all up and move. But this is where we're at for the time being, and this may be where we stay for the rest of our lives. So, because I live in a rural urban setting, how do we prepare? There's a lot of people that are young. God bless them. They're moving out into rural areas. They leave the city, and they get a tiny house or a cabin or something, and then they get some chickens and some goats, and they get some solar panels and get a composting toilet, and they've got kids and all that, and that's great. They get a garden and they raise all their food. But that's just not always possible for people that live in the city, whether they have a small piece of property like I have, or whether they live in an apartment or some other place. So what do you do? And I know I've taken a long time to get to this point, to get to the punchline, and I hope that you haven't grown weary in the process. I hope you've enjoyed at least me sharing my journey to where I'm at. And maybe some of you can relate to what I'm talking about. So because I came from a farming background, agricultural background, prepping kind of a background, I have always believed in self-sufficiency and believed in being prepared. Long before world events are where they are today. So years and years and years ago, my wife and I always, I started saving precious metals when I was 18. I always thought it would be good in case, there's economic collapse to have a little bit of gold and silver. And some of you say, oh, hey, I read in the book of Isaiah. And I'm sorry, I'm not mean to make fun of anybody, but I am kind of, they're going to throw their gold and silver into the streets. Well, first of all, if you go read, and so I'm not going to buy gold and silver. Well, let me just say, 100 years ago, that's all we had as money in this country was gold. Well, it's not all we had. We had paper money too. But initially, all they had was gold and silver. And then paper money came in the, in the 1860s or whenever it was in this country. And then, but even then, there was gold and silver. Gold was up until the 1920s. Silver was up until, in the United States, up until 1964. So that was the money that we had along with the paper. And so, yes, there will come a time when gold and silver is thrown into the streets, as is mentioned, I think, in Isaiah. But, and the Bible's very clear, don't put your faith in gold and silver. However, in Bible times, that's all they had. And there is intrinsic value in that. If you don't believe that, I'm sorry, you don't know your history. Go back and review that. But there will come a time when maybe there is economic collapse. People are starving to death. And, when Jerusalem was, and that's when these prophecies we're talking about, when Jerusalem was about to be invaded by the Babylonians, at that point, people were resorting to cannibalism. And the gold and silver was not something you could eat. But in the meantime, while there is still an economy, gold and silver and precious metals is very helpful as long as you don't make it an idol. And also the Bible talks about putting your faith and trust in that as an idol. So up until we get to those times, if we ever get to that time, gold and silver may be very helpful, especially if we move to a cashless society, which we already are in a cashless society. But if it's required to buy and sell, where a mark, a subcutaneous mark of some kind, as Revelation 13 talks about, where you can't buy or sell without the mark of the beast, some gold and silver and things like that, items to be able to barter may be very helpful. And I saw the handwriting on that wall when I was about 18. So I have been investing in that area, if you will, for almost my entire life, since I was a teenager. And if I never need to use it, then I'll have a nice little inheritance for my children. So you can't win either way. You can't lose either way. So that's one thing. Also, food. Food is probably the most important. Food and water. And again, growing up on a farm, we always had a supply of food. Actually, on the farm, we probably could have lived for 6 months at least without going to the grocery store. We had enough food stored up. We had fruits, vegetables, and that kind of thing that we could eat on. Yeah, it might have been a little bit, eating potatoes and carrots and squash and some of those things. But we always had a lot of canned fruit, so we could have probably lived for months without having to go to the store. And to be honest with you, my wife and I, we're well provisioned in that area too. We have things in 5-gallon buckets with gamma seal lids, and we have them stored. And the beans, the rice, the grains, the salt, the sugar, everything's all natural. Everything's all organic. We have it, sealed. We have many other things that so we're good in that area. So I encourage people, if in the city, get some of the basics that you need. Don't wait till the last minute. to go run to the store to get things. You can get canned goods. You can get packages of grains, of rice. Rice doesn't store too long because the oils break down, but you should have a little bit. Certainly grains and beans. Beans will store forever. Good source of protein. I would also get seeds so you can do sprouting, so you can have fresh vegetables. As far as fresh vegetables go, because I'm a plant lover, I have been studying wild edibles for 30 years. I can go out into the fields all around here, and I can harvest wild edibles. I'm a plant geek. I'm plant expert. I'm an expert on trees. I'm an arborist, and I can harvest wild things. Now, they don't have a lot of protein in them, but they have a lot of minerals, and many of them are medicinal. And all around here, and just about everywhere you go, there are books about these things, and you might want to learn a little bit about that. I've learned something about wild medicinal herbs. I'm not an expert on that. I am very knowledgeable when it comes to wild edibles, though, and it's a hobby of mine. I've really studied that intensively. I have hundreds of photos of the wild edibles in my area, as well as I have a whole list, and I've been doing that for years, and it's a fun hobby of mine. So I'm not going to starve to death. I might lose a little bit of weight, but between the beans and the rice and the grains that we have, as well as the wild edibles, we won't starve. So food is very important, and you certainly can. You can go, if you have the money, you can go buy prepared meals from various sources, but you really can, if you get the basics, get beans, rice, grains, get some seasonings, so that this makes the food a little more palatable. Because if you're just eating the same thing again and again and again, it can get a little bit monotonous. Get some salt, sugar, honey, or sweetening, you can buy dried eggs, you can buy dried potatoes. A lot of these things are available. Very, 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 there are many people that sell them. Dried vegetables, all that kind of thing. But it was highly recommended. Not just because, you may have economic collapse or the end of the world or whatever, or war or other, but just because of natural disasters, floods, fires, tornadoes, hurricanes. There may be a crime spree, and there may be people may not be able to get to the store. You may need, whatever. So let me just back up a little bit. And I don't have a bunker. I don't have a hideout in the mountains. Some people have go bags. I have a go bag. If I need to, I can throw something on my back and go. But to be honest with you, I don't know where I'd go. I don't have a ranch or a farm or someplace out in the mountains to go to. And if you went where I live, this is not Southern California or Florida, but where I live, if you were to go out away from the valleys, you'd be in the mountains. It's very wet and rainy and cold around here. You could very easily die of hypothermia if it was in the wintertime. It can be, there's not a lot of places to go. And we have mountains we have to cross over to get places. And then you're in the high desert where it's very cold, sometimes sub-zero, freezing, snow, ice, certain times of the year. It can be very hot in the summertime. So we've taken the approach at this time to shelter in place. So my wife and I, we figured we will resort to camping at home. So you might say, well, do you have solar panels? Can you create electricity? Yes, I have ways. I have several ways to create solar, charge batteries. But at least where I live, it is cloudy and rainy good bit of the year. And so relying on solar power in my area is not feasible. It's great during the summertime when you really don't need it so much, when it's light and bright and warm. But in the wintertime, it takes a while to charge those solar batteries, and you're going to be relying on the grid. So Yes, I do have solar panels. I can charge. I can charge lighting. I can charge computers and batteries and some things like that. But it's not real reliable in my area. Now, other areas that are more sunny, different story. So that's why we have taken the approach we will camp at home. So I have a lot of wood stored, firewood. I'm a tree service, so I get free firewood. I have multiple cords of firewood. We can heat our house. We have a wood stove we can cook on. I also have several ways of cooking. I have a Coleman stove. I have probably 15 gallons of Coleman fuel. I have kerosene. I can light kerosene lamps. I have boxes of candles. We're not going to shiver in the dark. I've had these things for years. I've had some of these things for 20, 30 years. I have sleeping bags because we're outdoorsmen. We sleep, we camp, we have cold weather clothing. We live in an area where it can get rather cold. I'm in the outdoors all the time. I've got Gore-Tex, I've got rain gear. I'm not going to freeze to death. We got boots. My wife and I both have these kinds of things, cold weather clothing, again, because we live in an area that's not, it's moderate, it's temperate, but we do get cold, and it can be, when it's raining and it's like maybe, just barely above freezing, it can be really bone-chilling cold. And so, we have these things. It's just part of our life. We have water purification, again, because I'm an outdoorsman. I've had to go backpacking and camping. You have to, you can't always drink water from the stream. So I have multiple ways to purify water. Down at the end of the street, I have a river, so I can go get 5-gallon buckets of water, and I can purify the water. I have multiple ways to do that, just as part of my camping equipment. So these are things you can do in the city. You don't have to be a sitting duck. You don't have to be vulnerable. You don't have to go running to the government the moment something happens. A lot of people are going to be running to the grocery stores to clear out the water and clear out the food, and it's like, I don't want to be a victim. I'm a victor. I'm more than a conqueror, spiritually and physically. Our YouTube channel and our ministry primarily is about spiritual prepping. But that is not to diminish the responsibilities we have to take care of our wife and our children, our families, and maybe help some of those around us by being provisioned for whatever. Even the Red Cross and Federal Emergency Management Administration, FEMA in the United States, and even our own electric company here in our area, and even our own city, where they're constantly putting things out to people to prepare and to have a little bit of food and have lighting and have extra water and have things, in case electricity goes out, the power grid goes down. So my wife and I, we will not be sitting ducks. I have extra, I have a tree service, so I have, for my equipment, I have extra fuel, diesel and gasoline stored up for my equipment, which I can use for personal use. I have generators. Generators will only go so far. I've got like 3 generators. I can run my freezers and refrigerators for a while, and eventually when you run out of gasoline, then that can be a problem. But, I can at least go for a little while. These are just normal things that we do, that we can do to survive. I have my wife and I have bicycles. So if we need to get somewhere, we have extra inner tubes and bicycle repair equipment, so we can use our bicycles. If we have no other means of transportation, we can maybe go somewhere and transport ourselves at least short distances. These are all the things that I just think are wise for people to do. I store seeds, vegetable seeds. I have them in a sealed containers, and some of them I have in the freezer, or at least in the refrigerator, where if I need to, I can grow some of my own vegetables. I don't have a large area to do that in, but I could do that. I could till up some of my ground and plant vegetables and so forth. I also have I have self-defense systems. I'm not crazy about that. Okay, look, guys. We have locks on our doors. We have locks on our, we have security systems. We have, you know, we have insurance. We have first aid. We have fire extinguishers. Most of us have these kinds of things around our homes or in our vehicles or wherever. That's just part of being wise, not being caught with your pants down, so to speak. And I have firearms. In the United States, this is part of our culture. I've been around firearms all my life. I have ways to defend myself. If I my first line of defense is the blood of Yeshua and spiritual warfare. Make no mistake about it. I've never needed to defend myself against evil people. And I look first to Yehovah Elohim, the Shomer Yisrael, the one who is our Rohi, our shepherd. I look to Yehovah as our healer, Yehovah Rafaka, Yehovah Yira, our provider. These are all his covenant names. I look to that first and foremost. But he expects us to prepare the best we can with the means that we have at our disposal, and to prepare. And he expects us to. Let me get a little more light on the subject. There we go. Look at my eyes, and they're dark, and I didn't have the main light shining on me. That's a little bit better. Anyway, so we can do certain things. I have security cameras because in my area, I've lived in this town for this is my 40th year, and it's grown a lot, and the city has moved out, and along with that, the crime and criminality. I've had things stolen out of my vehicle. We have alarms on our vehicles. I have security cameras because we're having more crime, just out of people's yards, out of their vehicles, all around us. I have lights that come on all around my home. Yes, I do spiritual warfare, but we've got to do our part to discourage the evildoers from coming in and doing their evil thing, killing, stealing, and destroying. So these are all things that I have done. I have first aid kits. I have a lot of herbal medicines and essential oils, which I use. I believe in healing. I pray. All these things. We have first aid, a lot of first aid equipment, some first aid training my wife and I know and have done. And raising kids, you need to know some of these things. And you need to have, if you take medicines, you need to have some of those things stored up. I'm blessed. I don't have to take any medicines yet, thankfully. But these are all things you can do in home. There is always a concern about the security of your home. If food became an issue and you had gangs of people marauding around, I will defend my property from or my home and my life with lethal force if I need to. That is biblical, and to do so as a last resort. And I have the means to do that. I would, but I have other means also that are non-lethal. I carry pepper sprays all around. I've got my wife, sometimes she's out and about. She has an electrical stun gun that she can carry with her. We're not stupid. We're to be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. We're to not be ignorant of the enemy's devices. The Israelites carried swords. I have a concealed carry permit. I carry, if I'm going into places. And I know how to use a firearm. These are all things that people can do, and they're all legal. And with the proper training and a little bit of knowledge, I have many books, in my library here on preparedness and what to do in emergencies. I think it's very wise. This has not been a comprehensive prepping course. I've just been extemporaneously ad-libbing as I think about things. I want to share my thoughts about prepping. I am a firm believer in it. I am not going to be a victim. We are more than conquerors. We are called to be prepared. The end times are here. How much time we have, exactly when things are going to happen, I don't know. How are all the scenarios of the Bible prophecy going to be fulfilled? I don't know. I've taught a lot about that. I've and so forth and so on, but I don't know the specifics. Will we need to flee and go somewhere else when, let's say, if the mark of the beast happens in my lifetime? Yes, maybe. Where? I don't know. That's part of the faith walk, dear brothers and sisters. That's part of the faith walk. We've got to exercise our spiritual hearing, stay close to Yeshua, our Messiah, so that if he tells us to go, if the Holy Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, tells us to go here or go there, I believe that Yehovah is preparing places for his people to go to, those that are able to go. If things get bad, there are people that I know who have it on their heart. They have property. They have more rural settings where they are preparing for community. I do believe in community. I do believe that when the times get really bad, Yah's people are going to have to come together in community. With Torah believers as well as non-Torah believers, maybe other Christians. But I think that the hard times are going to bring people together, and they're going to cooperate, and they're going to look past a lot of their differences if they love Jesus Christ, or whether they call him Jesus Christ or Yeshua the Messiah, whether they are full-on Torah obedient or not. I think people of goodwill and of a good heart who love Jesus, love Yeshua, are going to come together to help each other. And I think we're all going to learn and grow together and learn to help each other. And I think that's going to be a good thing. I think this has happened in many other countries, in China and India and places where there's a lot of persecution, in Africa and other places. And we haven't experienced this so much in the West, especially the United States, Canada, and other Western countries yet. But I think it's coming. I don't know if it'll be in my lifetime. I'm 64 years old, and I don't know. But it will come to a generation, because we can read about that in the Bible. So now it's a good time to begin preparing, thinking about these things. Part of preparing also is preparing spiritually and preparing mentally and emotionally. And there's a whole talk about that. That one could give. You've got to be, as the saying, forewarned is to be forearmed. So we need to think about these things. Don't be caught with your pants down, but have your loins girded, to use a King James biblical expression. Have your loins girded. Have your, be spiritually armed. Have the spiritual weapons of our warfare ready to go, but also be physically prepared. Be ready to go. There are more extreme things that people can do. As I started to say a little earlier, if gangs are maybe going to be marauding and trying to break into your house, it might be good to think about how you can secure your windows and your doors so that you will be less vulnerable, so that people will pass by your place and go to somewhere else. And again, those are things that you need to think about and prepare for. I think having a dog is very helpful, or maybe a couple of dogs as an early warning system. There's other things you can have. I have some, infrared, I think night vision, so that you can kind of see what's going on around you. There's a lot of things you can do. It depends on how much money you want to spend. Again, I want to emphasize our first line of defense. Hear me carefully. Hear me carefully. As the man, as a man that knows the word of Elohim so well, the first line of defense as a preacher of the gospel is the gospel message, is our relationship with Yeshua the Messiah. That is our first line of defense, a spiritual defense, trusting in Yehovah, walking by faith, and preparing spiritually to be, if you men, be the priest, the prophet, and the king of your home. And if you're a woman and you're single, then you need to be the priest, the prophet, and the king of your home, so to speak. But that is the first and foremost thing. And families coming together, have your tribe around you, have spiritual support, have people around you, have community. And then, of course, be prepared in your own home, or if you're blessed, you've got a place you can go. You know, my wife and I have a travel trailer. We could hook that up. It's well provisioned. We could be out of here in a heartbeat if we need to. You know, whatever Yah has given you, and you know, wherever you're at, whatever your means are, whether they're little or whether they're great, you know, do the best that you can. And I believe that Yah, if you have faith, Yehovah Elohim, our loving Abba Father, will prepare and will provide for us the rest of the way. And also think about how you can help others, especially those, the Torah says that we need to help those, number one, of our own family, our immediate family. That's our first responsibility. And then those within our gates, you know, our neighborhood, our town, and then greater Israel, and then beyond that, the world. And this may be, if and when these things happen, I mean, they will happen eventually, I don't know when, but this will be a great opportunity to minister, to share the gospel, to pray with people, to minister to people when they are vulnerable, to help people, and to, you know, and to be a salt and light to those around us. And hopefully, even in these dark times that will follow, that we can be salt and light, and maybe preach the gospel, share our faith with people, and bring people to Yeshua, help bring people to Yeshua. I hope this video has been helpful, and I'm just being transparent here with what we've done in our own lives. There's many approaches to prepping. This is our approach. This is where we are at. I say we, my wife and I, at this point in time. We've encouraged our children to do the same thing. And this is our approach to prepping. And so I hope this is something that you have found edifying. And if you have, then maybe pass this link to this video on to a few other people, so that we can be prepared both physically and spiritually for the very tumultuous and perilous times which are here and which will intensify before the second coming of Yeshua, our Messiah. Shalom Aleichem. May Yah bless you and give you the wisdom, and may you hear his voice so you know what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and where to be, and walking in his perfect will for your life at all times. Take care. Shalom.